Morning arrived over the village, but peace did not return with it. Smoke still rose from the homes destroyed during the attack, and the air carried the heavy silence left behind by fear. The villagers rebuilt what they could, because people who survive hardship rarely have the luxury of stopping. Jumong worked beside them without hesitation, carrying wood, repairing walls, helping the injured, not as a prince above them, but as someone finally beginning to understand their struggles. But even while helping, his mind remained unsettled. The attack had revealed a dangerous truth. As long as he existed, the people around him would remain in danger, and that realization weighed heavily on him. Later, the Damul leader confronted him once more. His words were direct and without comfort. Surviving weak enemies meant nothing now. The battles ahead would demand far more than instinct. The spear felt unfamiliar in his hands at first. Longer reach, different balance, different rhythm. Every movement forced him to adapt again from the beginning, and the Damul warriors gave him no time to adjust slowly. The training became relentless. Multiple attackers struck from every direction, while exhaustion slowly drained his strength. Spears collided violently, feet moved through dirt and dust, and every mistake was punished immediately. Day after day, the pressure only increased. Again and again he was thrown to the ground. Bruised muscles, burning lungs, shaking hands. His body screamed for rest, but the training never stopped, because the battlefield would show no mercy either. Each time he fell, the leader gave the same command, again. No sympathy, no excuses, only repetition strong enough to break weakness apart. Even the rain could not stop the training. Mud covered the ground beneath his feet, while cold water blurred his vision. Every movement became heavier, every mistake more dangerous. But slowly, suffering itself began shaping him. One wrong step sent him crashing into the mud once more. A strike landed hard before he could recover. In another battle, that moment could have ended his life. But no matter how many times he fell, he rose again. Pain no longer controlled him the way it once did. Now every bruise became part of his growth, and every failure pushed him closer to becoming stronger. That night, while others rested, she found him still training alone, exhausted, wounded, barely able to stand properly. Yet his hands still gripped the spear tightly, refusing to stop. When she asked why he pushed himself this far, his answer came without hesitation. Because if he became weak, innocent people would suffer, and after everything he had witnessed, he could no longer allow that to happen. Far away inside the palace, preparations for war had already begun. Soldiers trained endlessly, while weapons and armor filled the courtyards. The kingdom was no longer searching quietly. It was preparing to strike. The first prince stood over the war maps with growing obsession in his eyes. This was no longer about pride alone. To him, Jumong had become a threat that needed to be erased completely. But beside him, the second prince remained silent. The closer conflict came, the more uncertain he became, because deep down he feared the consequences of the path they were taking. Back in the forest, the Damul leader blindfolded Jumong once again, but this time the training was different. This was no duel. This was chaos. Warriors attacked from every direction without warning. Fast strikes, shifting footsteps, unpredictable movement. The battlefield would not wait for him to think. He had to feel danger before it arrived. Then suddenly, something changed. His body moved naturally, reacting before his mind could hesitate. He dodged attacks cleanly, countered instantly, and for the first time, true control appeared within his movements. Even the experienced Damul warriors paused in surprise. The reckless fighter they first met was disappearing, and in his place, a real warrior was beginning to emerge.
Later that night, she quietly treated the wounds covering his arms and shoulders. The firelight flickered softly between them, while silence carried emotions neither fully understood yet. As he stared into the flames, Jumong admitted the burden he carried inside, the fear of failing others, the fear of becoming too weak to protect them. And for once, he spoke honestly without hiding behind strength, but hidden far beyond the firelight. Danger continued watching patiently. The assassin had returned, studying Jumong carefully from the darkness. But this time, he was not alone. More shadows appeared behind him, silent and deadly. The enemies moving against Jumong were growing and preparing for something far worse. When training finally ended, the Damul warriors gathered around him differently than before, not with doubt, not with judgment, but with growing respect. And when several warriors bowed their heads slightly towards him, the meaning became clear. He hadn't fully earned his place yet, but he was no longer an outsider among them. At the palace, new information finally arrived. A hidden Damul camp had been discovered, and the moment the report was delivered, the direction of the conflict changed. A cold smile slowly appeared on the first prince's face. At last, he believed the advantage belonged to him again, and he intended to strike without mercy. Meanwhile, far from the palace, an uneasy feeling settled over the village. She looked toward the dark sky with growing concern, as if her instincts were warning her that something terrible was approaching. Unaware of how close danger had become, Junong continued training alone through the night. Again and again, the spear moved through the darkness with increasing precision. He was stronger than before, but the true battle had not yet begun. Then suddenly, flames appeared above the night sky, burning arrows cutting through darkness like the beginning of war itself. And in that moment, the fire that shaped him finally began spreading toward everyone around him. Training had forged his strength, but the coming war would test his soul.